So this is the warning, and I want to say that I don't think any deaf people watch my videos, but here it is. This is in my, well, not list, but it is on my schedule. And so I wanted to give a quick warning that this does have bullying and curse words. So yes, if you are not comfortable with any of these, please do not listen. Sorry, because there will be a lot of it, and I don't want anyone to go through the pain that they might have faced before. So anyways, I hope you enjoy, and yeah, let's get on. Walking down the street, I look around at the swing trees and blooming flowers. It all seemed so pretty compared to the hell I was going to. UA High School. How did I get in? I'll never know, but it was nice to learn in, but the people weren't awful. I came to a stop, reaching the street, looking both ways, seeing nothing. I crossed. I skipped a little bit on my way as I kept looking at the serenity I've been memorized to. A patch of tulips on my right, coming up. Yep, Mr. Helene's cherry blossom tree coming up to my left. I kept thinking about the scene around me until I saw a familiar green-haired boy with a familiar brown-haired girl. I started to sprint up to them, both turning around to see me running at them. I gripped onto the small notepad strung around my neck and came to a stop by them. I matched their walking speed as they both smiled at me. Deku grabbed the notepad from me and started writing. Bold Deku. Oh shit, I didn't need that. Good morning, Yin, wrote Deku. I smiled at him and quickly wrote back as I walked. Good morning, Broccoli. What's poppin'? You said. Just walking to school with you and Uraraka, he wrote. Anything new with you, Yin? Uraraka wrote in. I shrugged and shook my head, writing. Nothing really new to expect. That I might have a new signer for my classes for a few weeks. Maybe this one will let you finally come to class instead of staying in a separate room to learn, Uraraka wrote. Oh, yeah, then maybe you'll be able to come train with us, Izuku wrote. I gave a big smile, jumping a little bit from how excited, and nodded, setting my notepad back around my neck as we made it to school. I looked at Deku and Uraraka, giving them a wave, and headed towards my locker. Of course, they put my locker over on the opposite side of the school from my classroom, but I didn't really care. The teacher/signer I had didn't count me tardy or anything if I was late sometimes to class. Walking over towards my locker, I could see a few students look at me with a weird looks on their face. Just then, I saw a kid jump out in front of me and push an air horn into my face. Pressing the button of it, I could feel the vibration of it, but I just stared at him as the other classmates covered their ears. A blowhorn? Really? I telekinetically say to him. He just rolled his eyes and shrugged, thinking to himself. How even to fit not even a small flinch. I rolled my eyes and pushed past him, trying to make it to my locker. I could see a few students walking away from their lockers, probably signaling that the first warning bell rung. I let out a sigh of relief as the hallways cleared up a bit, but shrugged at the thought of what might happen. I've been known to be the main target of some kids in the school. When it comes to hallway clears, I'm in danger. Hurriedly, I walked to my locker. Reaching it, I put in the companions? That's probably a different word, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And opened it, only to have it shut on my head. Ooh. I flinched in pain and bit my lip as some kids started to surround me. I could tell they were yelling at me, for their lips were moving and they looked angry at me. I didn't even try to communicate with them or read their minds, as I just accepted it to this point. Trying to stop it will only make them hit me harder, I've learned. I felt one punch my shoulder, and I kept my ground, standing up strongly against his pushes. But I could see him getting frustrated as another kid came over and kicked the back of my knees, making me collapse to the ground. They surrounded me. They started to yell at me, leaning down and ripping the notepad off my neck. I reached up for it, and they started to tease me, keeping it out of my reach. I bit my lip, wanting to use my powers against them, but not doing it, so I could get in serious trouble. I just took everything, collapsing down on my side, feeling them kick me lightly and getting harder and harder with it. I could see pages of my notepad being torn to the ground with scrambles of them, which made me tear up. I took each hit and every kick as I lied there. After a few minutes, they walked away, throwing the notepad down at my face, hitting my chest and cutting it from the force. Damn bastards, I grumbled and leaned up, grabbing all the pages of my notepad. I could see one had something written on it because of those idiots. Bitch, you'll never be a successful hero. Probably going to die during the first training. Can you not hear your own amount of bullshit? You're deaf, not blind. So see your future being lowered. I bet your parents just took pity on you and kept you. Nobody will ever like a kid that can't hear. I frowned at all the notes and shoved them in a nearby trash can and started a stroll in back to my class, ripping out a few pages from my notepad that were already scribbled on. They couldn't have done better with the insults, I thought to myself as I threw the scribbled on pages in a nearby trash can as I continued to make my way to my classroom. Eventually, I reached the hallway of the class and noticed my new signer teacher walking out of the class. She didn't even notice me as she walked towards the teacher's lounge, carrying some papers. She wore a thin black pencil skirt along with a typical white blouse and matching black flats. I could tell right away she definitely wasn't a pro hero, unlike most of the other teachers here. And she definitely didn't seem like a good teacher at that. Shaking it off, I walked towards the class and threw my bag down beside me and took out my phone. I looked around, not seeing the teacher still, and then leaned back in my chair and scrolled through my phone's feeds. The teacher eventually showed up again after about 20 minutes of me waiting in the classroom. She was surprised that I was there and just late instead of being absent, and after what felt like an hour of her introducing herself and everything, we finally began class. She wasn't that bad of a teacher though, so I misjudged her, but I still didn't like the skirt she wore. Now it was lunchtime, so I picked up my bag book since I was allowed to carry it with me, and did you mean book bag? I'm not gonna say. And walked off towards the lunchroom. On my way, I searched through the crowd of faces for my attackers, just to make sure they wouldn't push me around while going to lunch. As I kept towards my head around, looking for them, I didn't notice that I had made my way into the lunchroom, safe and untouched. Smiling a bit, I walked more into the lunchroom, looking around for somewhere to sit, spotting Deku and his friends sitting near the middle of the lunchroom. I walked over and gave a wave to them. They all smiled at me as I saw Deku scoot over in his seat, signaling me to sit down. Sitting down next to him, I put my bag down beside me on the floor and pulled out my lunch. I took the notepad off my neck and placed it down next to me. They chatted along themselves as I just sat there and ate my food. I didn't mind not hearing them, honestly. Now, I didn't like not being able to hear anything, but sometimes it doesn't bother me. I was born like this, so I've grown to accept it, since it was all I knew. I was deep in thought until I felt a nudge on my side, as I turned to see Deku pointing at the notepad. I glanced down to see that it was open to one of the pages that they had been scrambled on. Why do you even stick around, you pathetic little whore? Oh my god. I sighed and shook my head, ripping the page out and shoving it into my bag, not wanting anyone else to point it out. As I took another bite of my lunch, I saw my notepad slide in front of me reading, "Who wrote that?" You assumed it was Deku. A bunch of jerks who usually push me around, but it's okay. I fought them off. You wrote back. I saw him look at me with a worried expression plastered on his features. His eyes stared into mine, and I could tell that he knew I was lying to him. But he didn't protest anymore, as he kept writing to me, along with Uraka and Ida as well, asking me about my new teacher and how I should come with them to see Aizawa again. I was technically in 1A, but because of my hearing impairment, I was placed in a separate room instead of the regular room. It was deemed that a signer was too distracting to the other kids, as I was taken elsewhere. I did sometimes go to a class, though, and hang out there when my teacher/signer wasn't there. Since there wasn't anyone else to help me, I used my telepathy to get some of what Aizawa was teaching, but it was too distracting to focus on his mind when the other students were around me, so I don't go to that class often. After a few minutes of lunch, I looked at the time on my phone, seeing that we were supposed to leave soon, so I packed up everything. As everyone stood, I followed Deku and them out, making sure to grab my notepad and things before walking out behind them. I could see them laughing and smiling to each other. As we walked on, I could see Deku turn around and he smiled at me, and I smiled back. After walking for a little bit, trying to manage through the crowd of people, I was pulled away from the crowd and onto an open hallway that didn't seem to have many students. I groaned slightly to myself and looked behind me, seeing the usual group of guys who threw me around. They started to push me around, grabbing my backpack in the process and dumping everything onto the ground. I could see them laugh at me as they shoved me down to the ground, letting me slam back onto the lockers. I hissed in pain as I hit my head and back on the locker knob. I looked up to them, seeing them glaring at me and laughing while they threw my backpack at my face and walking off. I huffed out in annoyance and a sad sigh as I scrambled around the floor grabbing all of my stuff. As I grabbed everything off of the floor, I could see someone walking over to me, then drop beside me. They reached down and started to pick up my stuff with me as I shoved it all into my bag. I looked up and was shocked to see who it was who had been picking up my items. It was Katsuki, Bakugo. He didn't look like he was saying anything until I saw him stand up and his mouth moved. I just tilted my head, though, and then quickly held out a torn up and mess of my notebook at him. He then took it and wrote something down, not looking at me once. He handed it back and quickly took off towards class. You really are deaf. Holy shit. Anyways, you're welcome, idiot. I grabbed the note and then stood up, grabbing my bag and walking to my class, waiting for the day to be finished. I look over at Deku as we walked out together. I wrote him that I just telepathically walked to him on the walk home, since it was easier than riding while walking. He just smiled and nodded as I closed my eyes, focusing. I finally got to connect to his head as we started to talk. So, Yin, I have to confess something. I look up at him with my eyebrow crooked up in confusion, but I shrugged it and let him continue. Go on. Well, I may or may not have told off those guys who bullied you earlier after lunch. You saw that? Yeah. Without thought, I quickly turned to Deku and threw my arms around him, smiling into his chest. Thank you so much. I started to tear up as he hugged me back, pulling me closer to him. You're welcome, Yin. Now they shouldn't bother you anymore, and if they do, while he was talking to me, I pulled away from the hug. Oh, I accidentally said something else, and leaned up and kissed him, feeling him tense up, but a bit before kissing me back. He pulled away, and I smiled up at him as tears spilled down his face. He reached a hand up and brushed the tears away as he smiled at me. I love you, Deku. I love you too, Yin.